Welcome, everyone, to our presentation on secrets in finance, breach risk, compliance gaps, and what to do now. I'm Miriam Brand, and I'm going to take you through a series of, we're going to look at kind of the credential breaches and the surge of machine identities. We're going to look at a breach and what it means for finance. So the breach we're going to be looking at is actually a relevant breach for financial institutions. We're going to talk about why it's important for financial institutions in particular, what this means for regulations, and then what the steps you need to take in order to make sure that you are safe. Now, before we dive into the presentation, some housekeeping issues. If you have a question at any point in the presentation, please put it in the Q&A box, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. If we don't get to your question at the end of the presentation, we will be in touch with you. Also, if you have a question about a specific regulation, I might want to look it up and not just kind of wing it. So in that case, I will delve into it and give you a more extensive explanation later. So please feel free to ask whatever you like, and we will address it in one way or another. So let's begin. Okay, so as you probably know, credential breaches have been surging. They are, but what is their source? Where are we getting all these? What's happening with all these breaches? We actually see the number one cause of breaches is compromised identities and credentials. Now, those identities, we're used to thinking in terms of human identities. I'm going to be talking about that in a little bit. But really, a lot of these breaches and the breaches that you see on the screen here are all happening because of breached machine identities. Okay, machines can be workloads and applications. They can be applications. They can be databases. They can be any sort of non-human entity. And these hacked machine identities account for 85% of identity-related breaches. And the average cost of a financial services breach is $9.5 million. That's the average cost. And as we can see with the Bank of America and the Department of the Treasury breaches here at the end, there's no one who's really safe. Now, why have we been seeing this rise of credential breaches, and not just credential breaches, but machine credential breaches? Part of this is because we just have so many more machine identities than we used to have. Again, we're used to thinking of human users, right? Engineers, employees, all the people who have to access things on a daily basis. The problem is machines have to access things second by second, not just on a daily basis. And we have more and more of them. We have containers, microservices, servers, databases, virtual machines, even automated processes can each be a machine identity. And now we have AI agents, which are causing a whole other slew of problems. And so at this point, we have at least 45 machine identities per human in your average organization. There's been a rise of 240% year over year. This is a rise in the number of identities in 2023, 1 year, and it's only going up from there. Now, I want to just remind you, so when we need to authenticate or authorize these identities, what we use are what we call secrets. So those include things like SSH certificates, database credentials, regular certificates, API keys, passwords, SSH keys. Okay. Now, the Achilles heel with these secrets are hard-coded secrets. Secrets that are hard-coded either into in code, into scripts, or today into AI agents. That's something that we also need to be aware of, and we need to start combating. Long-lived API keys. Orphan credentials. These are easy targets for hackers. Hackers know it. This is what they target. You'll frequently hear of hacks that start with an API key, or let's say an AWS key, let's say a cloud key. Those are frequently, they're not rotated as often as they should be, and they're long-lived and they can grab them. Or hard-coded secrets, the type that leak in when we see in code or config files. Now, secrets power financial sectors also, right? So you have API keys for payment gateways, you have database passwords for financial records, TLS keys for customer encryption, SSH keys for admin access. Now, these secrets, if a hacker gets even one of them, they're frequently getting the keys to the kingdom. They have a way to get to all your customer data or your financial data. And that's why these are so are so important to secure. Let's take a look at what happened to Bank of America. Not really at Bank of America, what happened to the third party that then affected Bank of America. And that shows just how careful we need to be with secrets. Okay, so in 2023, okay, there was the initial compromise. What happened? And you can see on the screen, I'm going to go over it. You don't have to read all the script, right? So hackers accessed a third-party service provider, IMS, and they did it through compromised credentials and open SSH ports. Now, once they got in there, they were able to exfiltrate the personal information of over 6 million individuals, and IMS had to inform Bank of America, of course. And then Bank of America had to notify their 57,000 affected customers. And they, in terms of their mitigation, they said, well, here's a membership to Experian, so it'll protect you from identity theft. However, you have the feeling where, like, okay, you're closing the window after they got in through the barn door, right? You let them in through this third-party access. The reason is because frequently third parties are given privileged access and no one closes it, okay? This is something we're going to discuss in a bit. What was the result? You had personal information of over 6 million individuals stolen, and for Bank of America, the personal information of over 57,000 of their customers. Okay, so you have that exposed, and then you have the risk of further identity theft and fraud, because if you haven't mitigated it well enough, some of these keys, some of these things may be open. You also have stories where they're not just getting customer data, they're getting other keys that they can lead them to even more and more information. So what do we learn from this? Okay, we learn that you need to implement ephemeral access. What do we mean? What do I mean by ephemeral access? That third party should never have had standing access to anything at Bank of America, right? All they should have had was a window that closed automatically, in which case, even if the hacker had breached IMS, they would not have been able to breach or have any access to Bank of America. There should be zero standing privileges, particularly when dealing with third parties, okay? And also, and I don't have this here, but another thing is encryption. All of this data should have been encrypted. Why were they able to decrypt all this personal information? Perhaps they also accessed an encryption key. That also must be very, very secure, right? What do we need to do? We need to do robust credential and data encryption. We have to have access controls. They have to be ephemeral, right? They have to close after a certain amount of time, and we have to continuously monitor access. Now, it's not a surprise that that's exactly what regulations want us to do, right? If we're looking at what's going on in regulations, the regulations are getting more specific in terms of, hey, we're not just talking about human access, we're talking about machine access. Now, American regulations tend to speak in very broad terms. Some of the recent European regulations are actually mentioning secrets management more specifically because they're becoming more and more aware of this as an issue. So here we have just an overview of some of the regulations. PCI DSS requires secure storage of your system credentials, encryption key management. Now this is very important. And the encryption key management has a special status because if someone has your encryption key and gets the data, they can decrypt it. If they don't have the encryption key, even if they have the data, at least you can say, well, it's all encrypted data, so it's gobbledygook. Now, you still have to inform, you still have to notify, but it's very important. So, for example, GLBA requires both encryption and effective key management in terms of secrets. FTC safeguards actually counts a compromised key as unencrypted data. In other words, if you are there, FTC requires notification within, I believe, 30 days for unencrypted data, also for a compromised encryption key. From the point of view of the FTC, if your encryption key was compromised, it is as if you leaked decrypted data. NYDFS requires you to limit and monitor privileged accounts. Now, that's not just human privileged accounts, right? And we'd be wrong to consider it just humans. It's any sort of privileged account. Remember all the different types of machines that I talked about earlier, okay? SOX, GLBA, SEC, they all mandate different access controls. Right now, also something that we see across regulations, and because it's so frequent in regulations, I didn't really mention it in this particular slide, is the requirement for a plan for mitigation after a hack. right? Let's say, hey, you did everything you could. There was a breach though. What do you do the second after, right? What do you do to close access? Of course, you have to notify, and that tracking is part of that. You have notification requirements. But also, what do you do to stop stop this gap in your security? So what do regulators want to see? What's going to keep your data secure when we're talking about machine identities and machine secrets? First, we're talking about access control. Who has access, when, for how long? Okay, the idea is that you know this, that you're controlling this, and that no one has more access than they need to have. The other is encryption. All data should be encrypted. Encrypted in both in transit as well, right? So at rest and in transit. Auditing and tracking, you need to be tracking everything that's going on with your secrets, and we'll talk about that a little later. Mitigation and recovery. You need to have a plan, but not just you need to have a plan, you have to have something that can help you automatically mitigate a breach if it happens. Let's go into each one of these categories. Okay, access control. You want to enforce least privilege by design. So you want to have just-in-time secrets on demand. What does that mean? A just-in-time secret, we kind of use it as, when you say just-in-time secret, we kind of use it as a shorthand to say, oh, you get it, because it sounds like, oh, we just get it right when we need it. It isn't just you get it right when we need it. Really, we're talking about usually temporary secrets. What you want is a secret that is only provided when needed and expires when it's not needed. So for example, if you have a third party, they need access to your database. They need access to your database. They don't need access to your database for the next month. The truth is, you should have it set up so every time they need access to your database, their identity is checked. Do they still need this access? And then they get the access. Then they get the secret, and the secret expires. That is the ideal way to set it up, and that's how you should be setting it up. RBAC and ABAC, so a role-based and attribute-based access automated policies, right? You want to say, hey, so I, for example, in my company, I have no access to development environments. Why should I, right? Based on my role. Okay, so everyone has a role, but also that role is going to be, again, it's tied into the identity. And that goes for machines as well. Now that we have AI agents, we have to start talking about the role of an AI agent. What does this AI agent belong to? You're not going to give it the keys to the castle. If the AI agent is only supposed to do, work on customer support, it only has access to those systems, right? And it can't create another agent that has access to different systems, right? Those are things that we need to control. Now, for that identity-based temporary access, we need to integrate with IAM and IDP systems, right? So we want to be able to check against these identity providers. Is this someone who needs access, and then give them the temporary access? And again, of course, we're tracking all of this access. Now, encryption. We want to protect our data at all times. We want to encrypt our secrets both in transit and at rest. We want to secure the encryption key. So, for example, at Akeyless, or we should say, if you use Akeyless, you are actually splitting the encryption key across environments with our patented distributed fragments cryptography. So the encryption key never exists in its entirety. It is nearly impossible to hack. We never say impossible to hack, but it's nearly impossible to hack. It's every fragment's rotated. It's very, very difficult. You want to secure your encryption key as much as possible. The encryption key really is the key to your castle. Zero knowledge. You want to make sure that even the secrets platform you use should not be able to read your data or your secrets. Remember that these are very important. You don't want a malicious actor to have access. As much as possible, you want to keep control. Auditing and tracking, you want to prove compliance, of course, but you also want to detect threats. So on the one hand, you need to audit and track, otherwise you can't comply with all these regulations. That's a basic, right? But you also want to detect threats. You want something that's going to notify you, right? You want logs of every secret access and modification. You want a record of who accessed what, when, and from where, right? And that, again, secret access, you want to know. And if someone shared, like if someone has there are, if you're using a system like Akeyless, you can do a temporary share of a secret to someone, like they have an hour to use it, right? And you want to know, did they use it? What happened with it? Like you need to know what they did with that secret with their temporary access, right? Now you can integrate with SIM for analysis, for SOAR, for the mitigation plan afterwards. You want to have integration with your systems between and your secrets management. Mitigation and recovery. This is important, and you can build it in to your secrets management. This is important. There are steps that you can only take with you. You want to do an incident response plan. These are things that are company-wide, but there are things you can build in to your secrets management that will make your life in terms of mitigation so much easier. Okay. You want to have, again, just-in-time temporary secrets with built-in expiration. That means that if one of these, if a just-in-time secret somehow leaks, goes to a person it shouldn't have gone to, after it's expired, it's useless. It's literally useless. Nothing has been, now, of course, you want to make sure that nothing happened, whatever, but they had a very limited time when they could have used that secret. You want to automate credential rotation across the infrastructure. This is super important. In a case if credentials are leaked, you want to be able to rotate them as quickly as possible so they're no longer useful. You want to revoke secrets instantly upon compromise. That requires central management and it requires the ability to automatically revoke. And you want to trigger, of course, predefined recovery workflows and alert security tools. You want to have different notifications, you want different alerts. And of course, this is part of your overall incident response plan. Okay, so what's the solution? How do you do this? You do it with effective secrets management. Now, of course, I'm a little biased here. We're talking about Akeyless here, but what you need to expect from a secrets management is what you do is you have automated processes and you draw the secrets when they are needed from secrets management. Your secrets management is a central repository. You draw the secrets and inject them only when needed and in the best, and then you use them for access to different third-party services, databases, applications, etc. Okay, and it should be integrated with your entire pipeline, everything that your developers need to do. It should be very easy to draw and inject secrets. It should be easy to rotate them. It should be easy to get temporary secrets. That's very important because, again, you want security to be simple and easy. Otherwise, it won't be used. If it's not used, you're not secure. So what is your secrets management checklist? What do you need to do when you're saying, okay, this is what I need to make sure happens? You want to make sure all your machine credentials are stored centrally. You want to make sure your secrets are encrypted at rest and in transit. You want role-based and time-based access controls. Again, role-based, what are they? And time-based, not just, there's also attribute-based, which you should also have, but time-based in terms of it should close, that window should be closing, right? You don't have a window that stays open. Again, especially with third parties, but with anyone. You want to have rotation and revocation workflows in place, and you want to make sure all access, all secret access, all machine access is logged and reviewable. Now, before we get to the questions, of course, I want to talk about Akeyless. Akeyless is secrets management that is ideal for regulated financial environments. With Akeyless, you can secure all your machine secrets across cloud and hybrid environments. And that means that using Akeyless and using our technology, you're actually able to rotate secrets in legacy systems, in your on-prem legacy systems. We've had customers that switched to us from other leading secrets managers who were not able to do it without a complex workaround. They started using Akeyless and they started rotating all of their secrets to their on-prem machines, on-prem servers. You can enforce RBAC, role-based access control, and ABAC, attribute-based access control. You can have temporary just-in-time credentials across the board and secretless authentication. Secretless authentication is perfect because it ties that temporary access to your machine identity. So it makes sure it's integrated into your machine identity. It identifies it according to your IAM, your IDP, whatever you're using for your federation of machine identities. And through that, it creates a just-in-time secret. There's no secret to hack because it's only getting secrets that then simply essentially disappear into the ether. They're simply automatically revoked. You have automatic key and secret rotation at whatever interval you set full audit logs and SIM integration, and zero trust, zero knowledge architecture. As I mentioned before, we have a special technology in terms of how we encrypt your secrets. It is based on standards. It's FIPS 142 certified, so it's based on encryption standards, but it essentially splits your encryption key across different environments, and you have a piece of it in your environment. So Akeyless also cannot decrypt your secrets, and that's very important. Only you can decrypt your secrets, and it also creates a tremendously a secure layer of security around your encryption key, making it nearly unhackable. And you have full support for international regulations and standards. I invite you to visit our trust center and see all our certifications, etc. We're built for security and we're designed for simplicity. Again, simple security is not security because it won't be used. Okay, you want to have we have hybrid SaaS deployment. There's no infrastructure to manage. What do I mean by hybrid SaaS? If you look on the right here, you'll see this is a very kind of abstract image. You have Akeyless is is the SaaS, but the Akeyless gateway sits in your environment. So there's a light stateless gateway. It sits in your it sits in your environment. It handles things like caching, and it also makes sure that Akeyless can't reach into your environment. The gateway is only outbound. You can reach into Akeyless for the secret, and it keeps you secure. And again, that's where you keep your piece of the encryption key so that Akeyless cannot decrypt your secret. We work across on-prem, AWS, Azure, GCP. We integrate with your existing IAM, CI/CD, and cloud stack. We've been proven in large financial services and fintech environments. And again, we have patented FIPS 142 certified DFC encryption to ensure zero knowledge. And so I went through that more quickly than I expected to. And now I will be happy to take your questions. So again, please put that into the Q&A. Let me stop my share. Hold on just a moment. Stop share. Okay. All right. So please, as I answer some, I see there are a couple of questions that have come in, and feel free to add more as I answer them. If I don't have time, I will be sure to be in touch with you and address them after the talk. So let's see. So one question that came in here is, let's see, how do regulators view the use of cloud-based secrets managers? Are they considered compliant for storing encryption keys or credentials? Okay, I'm going to repeat that. How do regulators view the use of cloud-based secrets managers? Are they considered compliant for storing encryption keys or credentials? Okay, I assume that what you're talking about is a CSP, a cloud service provider. Now, the problem with cloud service providers is that a lot of regulators want you to keep your encryption key apart from your data. And if your data is in the cloud and your encryption in the cloud, you need to, as you know, give the cloud service provider your encryption key, and it is not, in fact, separate from the data. That's a big problem for regulators with CSPs, with cloud service providers. In terms of SaaS providers, that's one of the reasons why we use a gateway architecture. So we're fine. We are using a SaaS specifically like Akeyless, where it's a hybrid SaaS, where you have the gateway in your environment. That in general has been fine for regulators. In terms of cloud service providers, it's the problem becomes when you have the encryption key together with your data. I see I have one more question here. Just to see a second, let me see. We already use a PAM tool. What's the added value of a separate secrets management solution? Okay, so PAM tools are created for human users. They've been used for many years. They're designed for human users. Human users join, they don't join that quickly, and they stay around for a while. You're not usually going to fire thousands of people in a minute, and you're not going to fire 1,000 people in a minute and hire 1,000 new people in a minute. That can happen with machines, though, because when we're talking about machines, we're including things like a Kubernetes cluster, right? You can spin it up, and then you can delete it. So those the identities themselves are what we call ephemeral. They're temporary identities, right? So these temporary identities mean that if you're using a secrets manager, you have to have something that in an automated way can handle thousands of identities a day and thousands of secrets a day, or hundreds of thousands, or who knows how many secrets a day. Not only that, but if the secrets manager isn't working, it's not giving you the secret, or there's a problem with the rotation, something like that, your business can break down, right? Because you need the access for your business to run, right? That payment gateway has to work. So you don't have the same so PAM solutions are generally not built for the scale you need in a secrets management. It's not built for that level of automation either, and it's not built for developers, because the people who use secrets management most, let's face it, are developers, right? Because they are the ones who are injecting secrets into the code, into the application, into whatever it is that needs access and that's running all the time, right? So those developers need something that works the way they do. It needs to integrate with their tools. It needs to work the way they do. And that is why you need to look at a secrets manager where your developers can say, oh yeah, I'm going to use this, right? This is simple to use. And I do want to do one more plug for Akeyless, that we actually, there's someone who switched to us from a competing secrets manager. They saw adoption go up 270% in, I think, 3 quarters, because again, it was easy to use, and that's what you need for security. You need people to use it. Okay, I'm just going to do one more check to see if we have any more questions coming in. Anything? Not that I can see. No. Okay, so thank you for joining me, and please feel free to contact me after the webinar if you have a question that you didn't think of during the talk. And of course, anyone who registered for the webinar will get a recording. So take care, everyone. Be well.